Session 26, part 2 na tayo ng Isaiah, first Isaiah. So, yung mga bago, kung may bago man, balikan nyo yung first Isaiah part 1 kasi mahalagang introduction o mahalagang panimula po iyon. Point number 8, the Syro-Ephraimitic War. 8 years later, meaning, maalala nyo, nang kinanto natin yung first years ng ministry ni Prophet Isaiah, i-review natin a bit, no? Which covering from chapters 1 to 5, mostly fighting in his younger days for mishpat, for social justice. So, nandoon yung context niya. In fact, we mentioned King Uzziah. Prophet Isaiah was silent. Then, lilitaw siya muli 8 years afterwards. At nas chapter 7 to 8 na tayo. Ito yung Syro-Ephraimitic War. Happened around 734 to 732 BC. Ano yung Syro-Ephraimitic War? Yung dalawang kingdoms, no? Kingdom of Syria and the kingdom of Ephraim. That's another name for Israel. So pag narinig yung Ephraim, nabanggit ko na ito noon, you are thinking really of in the north, the northern kingdom. Remember, Ephraim is in the north. So, kingdom of Israel, they waged war against Judah, the kingdom of Judah. And the kingdom of Judah at that time was under King Ahaz. Well, ano ba yan? Ahaz na snake? No. It's the name of the king. Ahaz. At so yung dalawa, the two kingdoms were forcing King Ahaz na sumama siya sa kanilang coalition to fight against the Assyrian Empire. Where's the Assyrian Empire now? Of course, Iraq. Kaya nga very significant yung pagpunta ni Pope doon. It's not only about the Christianity there, but also the napakalalim na kasaysayan simula pa kay Abraham. So, to stop the domination of Assyria, kasi nga, the Assyrian Empire, parang China, ay wanted to have more and more wanted to expand their empire. So, gustong labanan ng dalawa. He is forcing King Ahaz to join the coalition. Kaya, nung ayaw ni King Ahaz, so they waged war. That's why it's called the Syro-Ephraimitic War. And King Ahaz is the kingdom of is the king of in Jerusalem, of the southern kingdom where Isaiah was. So, well, ito yung mga protagonist ng kinuha ko to sa pambatang picture sa Syro-Ephraimitic War. You have here the map, of course, around 734 BC. From Assyria, the Assyrian Empire wants to expand, and the king of the Assyrian is Tiglath-Pileser III. We have seen him. We already studied about him in the second book of Kings. And then yung king ng Aram, babanggitin sa chapter 7, ay si Rezin, King Rezin. Aram means Syria. Ang hari ng northern kingdom Israel is Pekah, King Pekah. So they yung dalawa nagsama against the king of Judah to force them to stop the expansion program of Tiglath-Pileser III of Assyria. Point number 9 now, enters our prophet who is asked for his political advice. So first time nyo na makita na ang propeta pala ay political advisor din. So social critique, nalaman na natin yon kay Amos, kay Hosea. But this time, this prophet is very much involved in the power play in the court of Uzziah. Remember Uzziah? Now King Ahaz. Ano yung advice ni King Prophet Isaiah? Sabi sa Hebrew, lo ta'amino, kilo ta'ameno. Lo ta'amino, kilo ta'ameno. unless your faith is firm, you shall not be firm. In a poetic way, unless your faith is firm, kung hindi matatag ang iyong pananampalataya, hindi ka maging matatag. In short, manatili ka, tumayo ka sa Diyos, huwag kang sasama sa Assyria, huwag kang sasama sa sinasabi ng Syria at Ephraim to fight against Syria. Stand your ground. Trust in God, in short. No? So, unless your faith is firm, patibayin mo yung pananampalataya. Unless hindi matibay yung pananampalataya, hindi ka rin maging matibay. And to assure the kingdom will survive. The kingdom of Judah under King Ahaz will survive. So, ang daming oracles, ang pinangako ng propeta in so many words. Basahin na lang yung chapter 7 to 8. No? But one significant thing that he does, the prophet does, is he gives a sign. A sign. No? Sa Hebrew, ang sign ay ot. So, semeia sa Greek. The prophet gives the king, King Ahaz, a sign. At ano yung sign? Now, I'm doing the Hebrew kasi pagdating mo sa Greek, sa New Testament, maiiba. Ang sabi doon, Ha-alma is pregnant. The young woman is pregnant. Young woman in Hebrew is Alma. She will soon give birth. She will name the baby Emmanuel. So, yun yung sign. A marriageable woman, a young woman, is now pregnant. Maybe daughter of Ahaz or any woman there na nakita niya na sign of hope yung may baby. And the baby would be named Emmanuel, which we know already as God with us, meaning God will be with you. Stand your ground, no? On your 2 feet. Do not join the coalition. Do not be afraid of Assyria. Unless your faith is firm, you shall not be firm. So, yung sign. Sa mga prophetic, mahilig sila, sa mga prophets, mahilig sila magbigay ng sign. Tayo nga rin naman naghahanap tayo ng sign. Kaya sabi nga si Jesus, I will not give a sign. No? Naghahanap ng mga tao. This generation looks for a sign. No sign will be given them except the sign of Jonah. Yung sign o oath sa Hebrew ay parang a kind of a prophetic down payment. No? Anong ibig sabihin ng prophetic down payment? Na itong sign na ito is a kind of bayad na kasi mangyayari naman talaga yung sinasabi ng propeta. No? So, para maipakita na mangyayari talaga at ma-convince yung tao, magbibigay siya ng sign. So, it's a kind of down payment. No? It's not really prophecy in the future. Kasi present tense nga yung the young woman is pregnant. It's really in the present tense. Yung sa Hebrew. Pagdating mo naman kay Matthew, he makes it into a future tense. A woman will be with a virgin will be with a child and she will call him Emmanuel. So, gagawin ni Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, a kind of a prophecy for the birth of Jesus. That is his interpretation of this. No? Pero yung talagang original context ng prophecy ng Emmanuel has nothing to do about the future. It has something to do with Ahaz being convinced by the prophet not to join the coalition, but to have faith, to trust God. And this is the down payment. Yung babae, kikita mo, buntis na, manganganak yan, at tatawagin yan, God with us, or Emmanuel. We don't know who, maybe a daughter of Ahaz, but it is not identified kung sino yung babae na ito. Point number 10, the response of Ahaz. Hindi binanggit kung ano ang response ni Ahaz sa libro ni Propeta Isaiah. Pero alam natin ang kanyang response pag punta tayo sa second book of Kings. Sabi niya, halika, Tiglath-Pileser, you're welcome. I am your servant. Come up and rescue me. Dahil sa takot niya doon sa dalawang kaharian na nag-coalition laban sa kanya, ayun, tumakbo siya ngayon sa China. Sa China, sa Assyria. Winelcome niya. In short, he did not believe in what Isaiah said. He did not trust God as Isaiah wanted him to do. On the other hand, Ahaz trusted the Assyrians more than the word of the prophet. Rejected, Isaiah goes on a retirement. Hindi siya pinakinggan ng hari, thus, umalis na lang siya. And sabi ng mga ibang commentaries, nag-retire na siya. And this is a portrait of Bartolomeo Gennari, an Italian 16th century artist, Italian, 1594 when he was born. So 1521, ano tayo sa Pilipinas, and portraying here maybe this is the after Isaiah was rejected by King Ahaz. Kaya malungkot siya. Point number 11. This time, the king now is different. And after 30 years. So, ang haba ng kanyang retirement, no? After 30 years pa siya, muli mababasa natin na ang kanyang ministry. So we are now in chapters 36 to 37. Remember, until chapter 40 lang tayo sa first Isaiah. Then, yung account here has a parallel again in the second book of Kings. Similar account by the Deuteronomic historian, na-discuss na natin ito noon sa former prophets, second book of Kings, chapters 18 to 20. And the king this time is Hezekiah, the king of Judah. And the king of Assyria is no longer Tiglath-Pileser III, but Sennacherib, who is threatening to attack Jerusalem. Now, for those who studied with me sa former prophets, they will remember this very well, yung siege of Jerusalem na hindi natuloy by Sennacherib. And in fact, in the account of chapters 36 to 37, Sennacherib mocks the God of Israel. No? So parang may gumawa din kamakailan yung mocking the God of Israel, the God of the Bible. How will Yahweh, or the Lord, rescue Jerusalem from me? Sabi niya, mas makapangyarihan ako. How can that God of yours, no? Your God, rescue Jerusalem from my power, mocking the God of Israel. No? And this map is taken from a Bible, and I hope you can see it from your side, yung movement ng expansion ng Assyria. So, na-occupy niya na ito, no? Itong mga cities sa coast, no? At hanggang dito sa Lachish. Remember Lachish? Malapit na sa Jerusalem. So, na-occupy na nila ito. Na-conquer na nila ni Sennacherib. So, yung movement nila coming up from Assyria and then conquering the major cities along the coast, no? And the last target would be the main city of the kingdom of Judah, which is Jerusalem. So, nandito na sila sa city of Lachish. They had already won, they had already besieged Lachish and destroyed already the city. Dito na sila yung next na move nila. So, ito yung sabi ni Isaiah, recalling that event, which you find in chapter 1 verse 8. Ganun yung libro ng mga prophets eh. Hindi mahirap basahin dire-diretso kasi nga minsan na-collect sila in different parts, different sections. So you have to really read between the lines, sabi nga nila, para ma-determine ano pinagsasabi nito in relation to the bakit. So you need commentaries, you need a guide, talaga you need expert to explain anong nangyayari. Kaya yun ang sabi ko noon nung umpisa na tayo mag-aral ng mga propeta, is a difficult those are difficult texts because you cannot read them na dire-diretso katulad ng pagbabasa ng newspaper o pagbabasa ng nobela. No, kasi yung mga iba diyan first part, you go to the last part, or in the middle, and then yung connection niya nasa last. So then may section dyan na naisingit, later added, which stands a section that can stand alone as a unit pagbabasahin mo. So talagang you need a guide. So balik tayo sa chapter 1 verse 8, dinescribe niya in a poetic way yung situation ng Jerusalem habang papalapit na papalapit sa kanila sina Sennacherib, at natumba na ang lahat ng mga cities, major cities. Sabi niya, for fair Zion is left. Zion na lang ang naiwan, which means Jerusalem. And that's another name for Jerusalem. Like a booth in the vineyard. Parang bahay sa, di ba kumbaga, pakikita ko ng mga palayan na ganyan, dire-diretso yung palayan, tapos may nag-iisang bahay doon, o bahay kubo, nipahat, in the middle of a vast palayan, something like that, a booth left in the vineyard, like a shelter in a cucumber field. So, siguro field ng mga pipino, ganyan. And then, merong maliit na bahay na naiwan na mag-isa, like a besieged city. So, that's how iisa na lang silang naiwan sa mga syudad na inattack ng Assyrian leader, si Sennacherib. Anong reaction ng hari? Remember, Hezekiah now, ang hari. Wala na tapos na ang panahon ni Ahaz. Nagkasakit siya, medyo na-depressed. No? Natakot, siyempre. Kasi Assyrian, no? Nandyan na. And he terminally ill. In chapter 38, mamamatay ka, sabi ng propeta. However, he gets well because of nagdasal siya. Maganda yung kanyang dasal. His prayer. Then, he wept bitterly. No? So, yun napansin ng Diyos. No? Kasi umiyak siya. And, yung propeta, mahilig, parang doktor din siya. Tinapalan niya ang poultice ng fig leaves siguro, itinapal yung sa kanyang katawan. So, maybe yun yung gamot nung unang panahon. Nagdasal, pero uminom din ng gamot. O maybe this is the way of, katulad nung mga, di ba yung mga bata kami, nung pag kami nagkakalagnat, ilinalagay dito sa ulo natin yung dahon ng saging kasi malamig, no? Pampababa ng lagnat. So all that kind of balm, no? Na may itapal sa iyo para gagaling ka, something like that. But it's the scientific way of healing perhaps before. No? So you have the praying, but also since penitent, being sorry for his sins, and also taking the medicine. Then he puts on a sackcloth. He goes to the temple to pray, and he consults Isaiah. And this time, he asked for a sign. Kasi kay Ahaz, he did not like to have a sign. He rejected the sign. It was Isaiah who insisted that this is the sign. Sabi niya, ba't ko naman kailangan pa ng sign na yan? But humbly, itong si Hezekiah asked for a sign, for an oath. What was then Isaiah's political advice? Similar to Ahaz, the one he gave to King Ahaz. But this time, very simple word, do not be afraid. Trust in the Lord. But in Ahaz, it's more poetic. Unless your faith is firm, you should not be firm. Lo ta'ameno, kilo ta'ameno. Sennacherib, sabi niya, will fall by the sword in his own land. Do not worry. Trust in the Lord. Sennacherib will soon fall by the sword. He will be killed. Mamamatay siya. And unlike Ahaz earlier, Hezekiah heeds the prophetic word. Nakinig siya sa propeta. So pagdating niyo sa chapter 37, towards the end of the narrative, 36-38, sasalaysay na yung nangyari kay Sennacherib na sinabi ng propeta, he will fall by the sword. So the narrative says, then the angel of the Lord set out and struck down 185,000 in the camp of the Assyrians. And when morning dawned, they were all dead bodies. Of course, today, pag titignan mo, sobra naman yung angel of death or what. But these are, as I said before, his theological narratives concerning faith. So, let's not put ourselves na sasabihin mo, sobra naman ang Diyos o sobra naman ang anghel na yan na wala malang awa. But this is as I said, a narrative when the people of God did not have lost everything. So it must have been a hope for them to hear na makapakinig sila ng mga kwento na nanalo ang kanilang o nagtagumpay ang kanilang mga ninuno. So, the angel of the Lord set out and struck down the 185,000 in the camp of the Assyrians, and when morning dawned, they were all dead bodies. Then, King Sennacherib of Assyria left, so umalis siya, hindi na ituloy yung paglusob niya sana sa Jerusalem. He went home and lived at Nineveh. Where is Nineveh now? The Pope was there recently in Nineveh, in Mosul, facing the city of Nineveh. Yung Mosul asa nasa east ng river, east ng Tigris River, at yung Nineveh nasa west ng baka nabaliktad ko, but they are opposite sides. But the ancient city of Nineveh. And so he lived in Nineveh, and his own sons killed him. He will fall by the sword. So, the prophecy then of Isaiah I confirm. Point number 15 is the design of the book of first Isaiah. We said there are 39 chapters. The first 39 chapters is usually called the first Isaiah. And part 1, it talks about Jerusalem's future, chapters 1 to 12. And then part 2, Jerusalem and the nations, which is chapters 13 to 27, and the last part, Jerusalem's judgment and salvation, chapters 28 to 39. Ito yung sinasuggest ng mga some commentaries, how to subdivide, gabay sa pagbabasa. Pag alam mo yung mga part, halimbawa, nagbabasa ka ng libro o novela, hindi ka palaktaw-laktaw. You read yung section by section to get the story better. Pero in the case of mga prophetic books, ang hirap talaga nga. Sabi ko kanina, dahil nga some parts would belong to the last part or middle part nasa una. So you have to be guided by commentaries. Okay. Point number 16. Isaiah's message of hope. Yung kanina, puro crisis yung kinento natin. Now this time, let us see some of the messages of hope coming from chapters 1 to 39 or first Isaiah. Number 1 sa message of hope. Universal peace. This is the prophet who introduces this concept that there will be peace not only in Israel, not only in their nation, in their kingdom, but for the whole world. So, wala masyadong concept. Remember, tribal yung and clanish yung pag-iisip ng mga tao. No? They only think sa kanilang tribes o sa kanilang kaharian. They don't. If there is the concept of internationality ay malayo pa. It's a modern concept, yung pagiging international. But here, what we have already here, a seed of that, no? Of the thinking that peace should be universal, should be global, no? At hindi lang kapayapaan sa iyong sariling bansa. Especially now, ang daming bansa na nasa war, nasa like Myanmar na lang. No? So, universal peace. And that verse, the most popular perhaps, in chapter 2, verse 4, and that whole section actually. So I'm just quoting verse 4. He shall judge, meaning God, Yahweh, He shall judge between the nations and shall arbitrate for many peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares. Yung kanilang sandata, they will turn it into araro, meaning the army becomes a farmer. The soldier becomes a farmer. The warrior becomes a farmer. Go back to farming. And their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. What a beautiful message, especially dahil kagagaling ni Pope sa war-torn Iraq. So, universal peace. So, pag yung nakapunta na sa New York, hindi naman ako nakapunta pa, sa picture lang ito, sabi nila, merong statue doon sa United Nations headquarters, sa UN headquarters sa New York, kung saan meron itong image of that, verse 4, chapter 2, verse 4, ni Prophet Isaiah, let us beat swords into plowshares. Hindi na nakuha masyado yung kamay. Merong pamukpok ito ang kanyang gagawin niyang araro. Then, second point, sa message of hope, hindi lang among peoples yung peace, but also among animals. Peace in the animal kingdom. So it's a advanced thinking, no? And this is 8th century BC prophetic text. Pero naiisip na niya yung mga, of course, mga tao reflected in the work of the prophet Isaiah of a peace in the animal kingdom. The wolf shall live with the lamb, the leopard shall lie down with the kid. Ito yung mga magkakaaway na hayop. Yung pusa at aso at pusa, sabi nga natin, the calf and the lion and the fatling together. At yung bata, little child, shall lead them. Sa halip na matakot yung bata o lalamunin nila yung bata is the child who is playing with them, leading them. So, peace in the animal kingdom. What a great message of hope. No? And then, of course, nabanggit natin kanina, trust in the Lord. What do you mean trust in the Lord? Don't imitate yung ginawa ni Ahaz, but go to the example of Hezekiah. He trusted in the Lord. Pero, yung trust na yan doesn't mean nagpabaya siya. He prepared for any eventualities. Na nagtiwala siya sa Panginoon, pero gumawa din siya ng paghahanda just in case darating nga ang lulusobin nga sila ng Assyria under Sennacherib. So, ano magsabi natin sa Tagalog? Nasa Diyos ang awa, tiwala, pero nasa tao ang gawa. Or, an expression, trust in the Lord, pero itali mo ang iyong kalabaw. Sabi doon. Ano ibig sabihin noon? Trust in the Lord, pero yung kalabaw mo, mawawala yan pag hindi mo itatali. Huwag kang sasabihin, bahala na si Lord sa kanila. Sometimes, hindi yung tunay na trust. No? Pagpapabaya yun. Yung reaction minsan noon na narinig ko pa, na may COVID, ano tayo, sunod tayo sa protocol, ano tayo, sasabihin ng iba, ay Father, magtiwala lang tayo sa Panginoon, hindi tayo maano. That's not a genuine trust. That's simply pagpapabaya. No? Trust in the Lord, but tie your carabao, sabi nga nila. No? Bakit? Ang ginawa ni Hezekiah, to prepare for the war, no? He trusted the Lord, yes, but I will prepare just in case we will be attacked, no? Besieged. No? So, ang ginawa niya, naghanda siya ng tunnel, no? Dagdag ng tunnel to produce water sa spring. No? So, ito yung tunnel na gagawin nila para pupunta dun sa reservoir nila. Water is very important. And then to deprive the enemy of water. So, the source ng water, tinago nila kung saan yung mga springs, and then they dug a tunnel para yung water goes into the city, then thereby, they will have a supply of water. Gaano mang katagal ang paglusob sa kanila o pag-surround sa kanila o yung giyera na mangyayari, makakainom sila ng maayos na tubig. Remember, this is desert, and those who will be thousands of armies will not have water, and they will surely die. So, naghanda siya. And hindi lang, today you can visit that place. You can visit the tunnel of Hezekiah. And this is the picture that I took when I was a student in 1997 in Jerusalem. This is the Hezekiah tunnel sa loob niya. At paglabas mo yung pool of Siloam. Kailan mababasahin yun during Lent? Yung blind na man na napabalik ang kanyang eyesight. This is the pool. That's the end of the tunnel. The pool of Siloam. See? Trust in the Lord, but tie your carabao. Another sign of hope sa prophetic text ni Isaiah would be the ideal king in the offing, meaning there will be a good king. Don't lose hope. There will be a good leader. Yun lagi ang bibigay niya ng encouragement. Kasi nga, siyempre, the kings, nakita natin, no? They were not giving good examples. So, there will be a king, an ideal king. And then he describes, a shoot shall come out from the stump of Jesse, meaning the king will come from the tribe of Judah, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord, and his delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. The Spirit of wisdom. So all the characteristics that a leader needs would be in him, no? Or in him or in her. Ito sa hari na darating. So, of course, later on, the Christians would interpret it as Christ the King. But that's already a later Christian interpretation. But this one is indeed telling us that don't lose hope. No? Kahit yung mga leaders na ganyan, someday you will have a good king. Para bang sa atin, we all hoping lahat na sana mayroon na tayong matino-tino namang presidente, matino-tino namang leader. Let's not lose hope as well. So, ideal king in the offing. By the way, that's the reason why si Joseph later on in the Gospel of Matthew would come from the tribe of Judah, because the understanding is that the leader who would be a Messiah would come from the stump of Jesse, from the seed of Jesse, meaning Jesse, the father of, then you have David. So, that's King David from the tribe of Judah. A Christian interpretation, pag pinag-uusapan na yung Messiah, there's no talk of Messiah here, no? Sa panahon ni Isaiah. They don't have that concept yet of a Messiah. It will come in a much later period. And last point, sa hope, there will be a remnant. Chapter 6, verse 13, while 10th part remain in it, it will be burned again, meaning may maiiwan na 10% or 10, pero it will be destroyed again. Like a cherubim or an oak whose stump remains standing when it is felled. So kahit na masira, halimbawa, masira yung kaharian, its stump shall be a holy seed. Yung stump remains standing, pero that stump may uusbong muli ang bayan ng Diyos. Its stump shall be a holy seed. Kumbaga, magsisimula muli. So, there will be a remnant, hindi totally mawawala. We don't know what is he talking about. Maybe, is he foreseeing that someday Jerusalem will be destroyed and that will still be in 586 BC, 200 years. Kaya nga, tuloy-tuloy yung Isaiah. So, after the time na ng Isaiah, mangyayari yung sinasabi niya na sisira lahat and a remnant will survive. Katulad noong yung sinabi ni Pope Francis sa visit niya sa Iraq. This is Mosul, in Karkosh, yung center ng mga Christians. Majority are Christians. Kaso dahil sa ISIS, they destroyed the mga churches and yung mga Iraqi Christians, mostly Catholics, ay talagang they fled, no? Kaya ilang libo na lang ang naiwan na Iraqi Christians sa Iraq. They used to be like 10% or 1 point something million before yung kay Saddam Hussein. And then you have the wars, and then you have the ISIS. For years, they controlled this place until they were liberated by the Americans and by the Iraqi forces. Kaso talagang silang-sira na. And persecuted yung mga Christians dito. Sabi nga na sa mga analysis, you cannot imagine how they could survive. No? And few of them remained there. No? Kaya nagpunta ang Santo Papa to encourage them. Stay here. Meaning, you are the future of this land. This land has a history of our faith. No? Punong-puno ito ng kasaysayan. So he was there to encourage the few who remained, especially the young people. Kaya nung kumakanta sila sa church, lahat, bahala na yung COVID-19, hindi pa nakamask yung iba. You really, those who know history, the history of Iraq, and while I'm preparing this talk, naisip ko yung sabi nga ni Propeta Isaiah, there will be a remnant. Makikita nyo yung faith na mag-grow, especially after the visit of Pope Francis. Kaya ang sabi niya nga, hope is more powerful than hatred. Till next week. Ito po si Father Randy Flores ng Lahat Parish Shrine, Quezon City and Biblical Apostolate of the Diocese of Cubao. God bless you. Bye-bye.